Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Today we will talk about friendship in the world of Harry Potter. While much attention is given to the friendship between Harry, Ron and Hermione, we must not forget about other important friendships. One of the most famous examples is the group that became a legend among fans, the Marauders. Let's take a closer look at some interesting details behind this group that you may have noticed or perhaps missed. Enjoy the video. Number 1. The Marauders, a name mostly created by fans. If you ask any Harry Potter fan who the Marauders are, they will probably tell you that they were a group of friends of James Potter. However, an interesting fact is that the books themselves do not mention them calling themselves the Marauders. This name was actually proposed by the fans. The only time the word Marauders is used in context is, of course, in reference to the Marauders map, where the friends' names appear. Therefore, we can assume that they chose this name simply to give the magical parchment a cooler title. Number 2. The Marauders' path ended in reverse order. When Harry first encountered the Marauders' map, he saw the names Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot and Prongs. However, by the end of the story, the fate of each of these characters unfolded in reverse order. First, James Potter, Padfoot, died, followed by Sirius Black Prongs. Then came Peter Pettigrew, Wormtail, and finally Remus Lupin. Moony fell in the Battle of Hogwarts. This is an interesting detail, and while J.K. Rowling has not commented on whether it was intentional, many believe it to be symbolic. Number 3. Sirius Black, the oldest, possibly. J.K. Rowling always delighted her fans with little details about the Harry Potter world, and one of these details concerns the age of the Marauders. In the final book, we learned that James Potter was born on March 27, 1960, and Remus Lupin on March 10, 1960, making Remus older than James. But here's an interesting detail. In 2015, Rowling revealed Sirius Black's birth date, November 3, 1959. Therefore, Sirius was likely the oldest of the Marauders. Number 4. Animagus reveals personality. One of the most memorable aspects of the Marauders' friendship is their decision to become meninogui, wizards who can transform into animals at will. Interestingly, each of them transformed into an animal that reflected their personality. Sirius became a dog, loyal, devoted, and brave. James was a stag, a symbol of leadership and royal power, and Peter turned into a rat, an animal that may have been a warning sign to everyone around him from the start. Number 5. The Marauders' map doesn't cover 2 areas of Hogwarts. When the Weasley twins gave Harry the Marauders' map, they claimed it covered every room, staircase, and hidden passage in Hogwarts. However, this is not entirely true. The map cannot capture 2 important areas, the Room of Requirement and the Chamber of Secrets. The first has magical properties that are difficult to depict on the map, while the second was just a myth when the map was created. Thus, these places remained unnoticed by the Marauders and therefore are not present on the map. Number 6. Peter Pettigrew could have been in another house. An interesting fact that few know is that Peter Pettigrew could have been placed in Slytherin. According to Rowling, his characteristics were similar to those of Slytherin's, and that's why the Sorting Hat took over 5 minutes to decide whether to place him in Gryffindor. Fans often wonder why Peter ended up in Gryffindor. Perhaps when he was younger he still had traces of bravery, but over time this quality disappeared. Number 7. An alternate ending for Remus Lupin. Remus Lupin played a key role in Harry Potter's life, becoming his mentor, friend, and protector. However, in Rowling's original plan, Lupin was supposed to have a different ending from the one we see in the books. In 2011, the author revealed that she had planned to keep Lupin alive, allowing him to find happiness. However, in the final version, he dies in the Battle of Hogwarts, becoming a victim of circumstances. Number 8. James Potter's legacy in Quidditch. Harry inherited not only his appearance, but also his love for Quidditch from his parents. We all know that James Potter was a seeker for Gryffindor, but here's a funny detail. In the movie Philosopher's Stone, we see a plaque with his name listing him as a seeker. However, a year before the movie was released, Rowling stated that James was actually a chaser. This small inconsistency between the books and the movie became a topic of discussion among fans. Number 9. Sirius and James, a friendship that became family. The friendship between Sirius Black and James Potter stands as one of the most profound and heartwarming bonds in the Harry Potter series. Sirius grew up in a family steeped in prejudice and dark traditions. The Black family's disdain for everything that didn't fit their narrow view of purity left Sirius feeling isolated and suffocated. But when he was just 16, James and his parents opened their home to him, offering him a refuge from a life of hate and loneliness. Sirius found not just friendship, but a true family in the Potters. This bond grew deeper over time. The Potters showed Sirius what it meant to be loved unconditionally, to be part of a family that valued him for who he was. When James and Lily had their son Harry, Sirius didn't hesitate to become his godfather, a gesture that spoke volumes about his loyalty and love for his friend. Even after James's death, Sirius remained devoted to Harry, honoring his promise to protect and care for him. "You're the closest thing to family I have left," Sirius once told Harry, proving that for him, true family wasn't defined by blood, but by the strength of friendship and loyalty. Number 10. Who really created the map? For years, fans believed that all 4 Marauders had a hand in creating the famous Marauders map. The idea of their collective genius was a popular one. However, J.K. Rowling has since revealed a more nuanced truth. Remus Lupin himself admitted that his role in the map's creation was more ideological than technical. He used his sharp awareness of Hogwarts' hidden passages and secret corners, honed through his transformations into a werewolf, to guide the map's design. It was his instinct for the castle's secrets that helped shape the map's magical accuracy. But when it came to the actual spellwork and magical engineering, the real masterminds were James Potter and Sirius Black. Their natural talent for magic, coupled with their love for mischief, allowed them to pull off such an extraordinary feat. As Lupin recalled, James and Sirius were the ones who made the magic happen. Peter Pettigrew, on the other hand, contributed little to the actual creation of the map. His role was more supportive, a reminder of his eventual betrayal. As James once joked, Peter's contribution was mostly in the background, like his loyalty. Number 11. Why Lupin was never a prefect. Remus Lupin was always the responsible one, the voice of reason among the Marauders. It seemed like a natural choice that he should become head boy. Yet, when the position was ultimately given to Lily Evans, it raised questions. In Order of the Phoenix, Remus confided in Harry about why he wasn't chosen. "Dumbledore thought it would be too difficult for me," Remus admitted, explaining that the headmaster feared he wouldn't be able to control his friends. James, Sirius, and Peter were known for their pranks and mischief, and Dumbledore doubted that Remus could keep them in check, while also fulfilling the duties of head boy. Even without the badge, Remus remained the moral compass for his friends. He was the one who offered guidance, kept them grounded, and steered their pranks toward harmless fun rather than chaos. Despite the lack of a formal title, Remus's influence was undeniable. It was always Remus who stopped James and Sirius from crossing the line, Harry later recalled. Remus may not have been head boy, but he was always the leader in the ways that truly mattered, leading by example with integrity and care. Number 12, Peter Pettigrew and the Secret Hideout. Peter Pettigrew's place in the Marauders group is often debated, especially after his betrayal. Yet, there is one story that often gets overlooked, the story of his loyalty and compassion. When Remus Lupin, struggling with his lycanthropy, was rejected and ostracized, Peter was the one who came up with the idea to create a secret haven for him. "Why don't we find somewhere safe for Remus?" Peter suggested, knowing full well the challenges their friend faced every month. This hideaway, nestled near the Forbidden Forest, became a sanctuary for Remus during his transformations, a place where he could heal without fear. That secret refuge would later inspire the creation of the Room of Requirement, though the room existed long before the Marauders made use of it. It's easy to forget that the Room of Requirement wasn't just a magical anomaly for pranking or hiding. It was a place of comfort and healing, rooted in a simple act of kindness. In a time when Remus felt like an outcast, Peter's idea provided him with a sense of belonging and safety. It was a gesture of care, something that would shape their bond forever, even if it was later overshadowed by Peter's ultimate betrayal. Peter's action wasn't one of selfishness, it was the act of a friend who, despite his later fall from grace, showed empathy and support when it mattered most. "Peter always meant well," Sirius once said, his voice heavy with the memory of their shared past. It's important to remember that at one point, Peter Pettigrew was a true friend. His gesture, no matter how small it seemed, at the time spoke volumes about his potential for goodness, a potential lost, tragically, in the years that followed. Number 13, the quiet influence of Lily Evans. James Potter's life was never the same after he met Lily Evans. From the moment they first crossed paths, James was captivated by her. His infatuation was apparent, and he often tried to impress her with daring stunts, some of which bordered on reckless. As Sirius Black once joked, James was so madly in love with her he would have done anything. But Lily saw through his antics. She was not impressed by his bravado. Instead, she criticized his behavior, particularly when it came to his bullying of Severus Snape. "You're nothing but a bully," she once told him, and her words stung. But something changed over the years. James didn't remain the same arrogant boy. He listened, he grew, he became better. The turning point came when Lily's words began to shape him. She didn't just change his heart, she challenged his mindset. Slowly, James started becoming the person she believed he could be. He stopped using his pranks as a way to hide insecurities and began showing the courage to stand up for what was right. His friends, like Sirius, could see the transformation. "James really changed after he met Lily," Sirius remarked, remembering how their friendship grew stronger as James matured. Lily's influence was more than just a catalyst for James's personal growth. It affected the entire Marauders dynamic. As James evolved, so did his relationships with his friends. The bonds they formed weren't just built on mischief and fun, but on a deeper, more meaningful connection. The Marauders remained close because, through their shared experiences, they learned to grow together. And it was Lily, with her unwavering ideals, who helped them find a way to become better men. "She made him who he was meant to be," said Remus Lupin, reflecting on how Lily's love not only shaped James, but also helped strengthen their friendship in ways that would last a lifetime. Number 14. Why Lupin never tried to cure himself. Remus Lupin's condition was a constant battle, and yet he never sought a cure. In the magical world, healing methods are abundant, yet lycanthropy, the werewolf curse, is one of the few conditions that cannot be fully cured. J.K. Rowling confirmed this in an interview, explaining that lycanthropy was a unique case in the wizarding world. Despite numerous attempts to find relief, it was Severus Snape who offered him the most help. Snape created a potion, the Wolfsbane potion, that allowed Remus to retain his human mind during his transformations. It was Snape who kept him sane, Harry later reflected, recalling the subtle yet crucial role Snape played in Lupin's life. Despite this, Remus never asked for more. He didn't long for a cure. Instead, he accepted his condition, even as it caused him tremendous suffering. The scars from his transformations were not just physical but emotional too. Yet Lupin chose to face these challenges head-on, without bitterness or self-pity. In a world that often viewed him as a monster, he continued to hold his head high, never allowing his curse to define him. His strength lay not in defeating the curse, but in how he lived with it. Lupin chose to use his condition as a means to empathize with others, especially those who felt like outsiders. He became a teacher, guiding students with kindness, understanding, and patience. "You are all here because you are special," he would say to his students, teaching them not only magic, but also the importance of acceptance. Through it all, Lupin remained one of the most selfless characters in the series. His condition could have consumed him, but instead it became his greatest source of compassion. He never sought a cure because perhaps he knew that true strength came from embracing who you are, even when the world sees you as something to fear. In doing so, he showed his friends and the world what it truly meant to be brave. Number 15, James Potter was a skilled duelist. James Potter was more than just a mischievous prankster and Quidditch star. He was a formidable duelist. His skill in combat magic was legendary, and even Professor McGonagall acknowledged that he was one of the most talented duelists Hogwarts had seen in decades. James Potter was undoubtedly one of the finest, she remarked. With his wand in hand, he would frequently practice with his close friend, Sirius Black. Together, they honed their skills, refining their spells and techniques to perfection. They weren't just playing around, they were preparing for something much darker. James's ability to hold his own in battle was proven during the First Wizarding War, where he became a key member of the Order of the Phoenix. His training paid off when he faced the Death Eaters, dark wizards who were as dangerous as they come. In one particularly intense encounter, James faced off against Bellatrix Lestrange, one of Voldemort's most loyal and lethal followers. The duel was nothing short of epic. Bellatrix was known for her ferocity, but James, with his quick thinking and expert spell work, matched her every move. Even in the face of such peril, James never faltered. Though James Potter didn't die in battle, his death was a result of his bravery. He sacrificed himself to protect his family, knowing full well that he was up against overwhelming odds. In the end, it wasn't a duel that claimed his life, but the treachery of a former ally, Peter Pettigrew. Still, his legacy as a protector and a duelist remained undiminished. His ability to defend those he loved, especially his wife Lily and young Harry, was what truly set him apart. James's talent was not just in his spell work, but in his determination to stand firm in the face of darkness. His skills in combat magic were not about seeking glory, but about ensuring that the light of good would endure. As Sirius Black later reflected, James wasn't just brave, he was smart. He knew what was at stake and he never backed down. It was that unshakable courage combined with his dueling expertise that made James Potter a true hero in every sense. Number 16. What happened to Pettigrew's wand? When we reflect on the fate of Peter Pettigrew, the traitor who betrayed Harry Potter's parents and ultimately sealed his own grim destiny, one small detail often slips through the cracks of larger events: his wand. After his death at the Malfoy Manor, many fans of the series were left wondering what happened to the wand that had once belonged to him. Was it discarded, lost? Or was there a greater meaning to its disappearance, especially considering the pivotal role wands play in the wizarding world? While J.K. Rowling never explicitly answered this question in the books, a curious comment made in a 2007 interview sheds light on the fate of Peter's wand, and in doing so, it opens a window into the character's symbolic demise. In an interview during the promotion of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, J.K. Rowling dropped a small but telling detail. Peter Pettigrew's wand was broken at the moment of his death and was never repaired. This seemingly minor piece of information carries a deep, symbolic weight when considering the broader narrative of Peter's life and actions. The wand, a key instrument in every wizard's magical identity, serves as a representation of their power, will, and connection to the wizarding world. For a wizard to lose their wand or have it destroyed is, in many ways, the final severing of their bond with magic. It is a point of no return, a symbolic death in itself. Peter Pettigrew's life, and especially his betrayal, had been built on the foundation of cowardice and self-preservation. As one of the Marauders, a group of bold, adventurous wizards in their youth, Peter was once a part of something noble. He was a friend to James Potter, Sirius Black, and Remus Lupin, standing by their side in their pranks, their loyalty, and their friendship. Yet when the moment of truth arrived, Peter chose the path of fear, betraying those he once called friends in exchange for his own survival. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, when Harry learns of the betrayal, Peter's actions are revealed in the most tragic of lights. He gave up his friends to the Dark Lord, leading to their deaths. The depth of this betrayal haunts Harry throughout the series, especially considering how Harry's parents trusted Peter implicitly. The truth behind his treachery was not just an act of betrayal, but one that irreparably damaged the fabric of the wizarding world. When we examine Peter's wand in this light, it becomes more than a mere tool of magic. It is the last tether to the wizarding world that he had once been a part of. By the time of his death, Pettigrew had long since abandoned any semblance of honor or courage, choosing instead to serve Voldemort out of fear. His allegiance to Voldemort was not a mark of loyalty, but a sign of utter degradation. The fact that his wand was broken upon his death at the hands of his own cowardice is a poetic reflection of his fall from grace. His betrayal shattered not just the lives of those around him, but also his final connection to the world of magic. The destruction of his wand is particularly poignant because, in the wizarding world, a wand is more than just an instrument of magic. It is an extension of a wizard's soul, as we see with Harry's wand in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Harry's wand, made of holly and phoenix feather, is intrinsically linked to him, and when it is used in battle, it often reflects Harry's emotional state and his personal growth. Likewise, Voldemort's wand, made of yew and phoenix feather, becomes a symbol of his twisted, dark soul. For Peter, his wand was a symbol of his connection to a world he had abandoned, and by having it broken in such a final way, Rowling symbolically severed his last ties to that world. Peter's soul had already been corrupted, but the breaking of his wand marks the irreversible end of his magical identity. It is a final severance that no magic could undo. Peter's broken wand also serves as a stark contrast to the fate of the other Marauders. James Potter, Sirius Black and Remus Lupin were all tied to their wands in ways that reflected their true nature and integrity. James's wand was instrumental in his defense against Voldemort, even sacrificing himself to protect his son. Sirius, too, wielded his wand in ways that were both rebellious and fiercely loyal. Remus, though often struggling with his condition, remained a noble figure, and his wand was a reflection of his character. For Peter, however, his wand had been used only to further his survival, to manipulate and deceive those around him. It was never used in defense of others or in the pursuit of justice. Therefore, when his wand was destroyed, it was not just a loss of an object. It was a loss of the very essence of what it meant to be a wizard. Interestingly, the breaking of Peter's wand may also be seen as a reflection of the way he had lived his life, constantly breaking and bending the rules, choosing personal safety over honor, and betraying those who trusted him. His magical abilities, once a part of the bond he shared with his friends, had been twisted into a tool for survival and self-interest. The fact that his wand was not just discarded or lost, but broken at the moment of his death, underscores the ultimate futility of his life choices. In the end, his own cowardice destroyed the very thing that had once given him power. This serves as a cautionary reminder of the dangers of betraying one's true self and the ultimate cost of living a life of fear and deception. Number 17. Sirius's unique Patronus. Sirius Black was a man of complexity, a figure whose past and personality intertwined in ways few could truly comprehend. Among the many enigmas that surrounded him, one of the most striking and unique aspects was the form his Patronus took. While the form of a Patronus generally reflects a wizard's innermost feelings and sense of self, Sirius's Patronus was far more than a simple representation of his inner world. It was a manifestation of both his past and his deepest desires, linked to his animagus form in a way that made it one of the most extraordinary Patronuses in the wizarding world. In the magical world, a Patronus is a powerful, protective charm that takes the shape of an animal. It is created through a spell that requires the caster to focus on their happiest memory. However, the form it takes is not always predictable. Some witches and wizards produce strange or unexpected Patronuses. For most, the animal form chosen by their Patronus reflects their personality, but for Sirius, there was something more profound at play. His Patronus was a large, silvery dog, one that was a direct match to his animagus form, a dog he could transform into at will. This fact alone set Sirius apart from others, for it was a rare and significant occurrence that his Patronus and animagus form would align so perfectly. Sirius's ability to transform into an animagus, a magical feat that only a few wizards have mastered, was extraordinary in itself. This transformation allowed him to become a large black dog, and, much like his Patronus, this form had deep emotional significance for him. In his animagus form, Sirius was free from the constraints of human society, able to roam without the weight of his troubled past hanging over him. The dog, in this sense, symbolized freedom, loyalty, and a deep-rooted need to protect those he cared about. This was more than just a magical trick. It was an expression of Sirius's desire to escape from the pain of his childhood and to shield those he loved from harm. But why did his Patronus take the form of a dog, and what made it so special? The answer lies not in the practical nature of the spell, but in the emotional and psychological layers of Sirius's character. The form of the Patronus is intrinsically tied to the wizard casting it, and for Sirius, the dog represented something far deeper than mere magical prowess. It symbolized his sense of loyalty, his fierce love for his friends, and his protective nature, particularly toward Harry Potter, whom he regarded as a surrogate son. Connection between Sirius and his Patronus becomes even more evident when one considers his troubled family history. Born into the Black family, known for their puritanical obsession with blood purity, Sirius had little room for warmth or affection. He was raised in a household where love was conditional, and his parents, especially his mother, were harsh and unyielding in their beliefs. His younger brother, Regulus, was more compliant with their family's ideals, but Sirius rebelled. His rebellion led to his estrangement from his family and his eventual disownment. It was during these formative years of isolation that Sirius began to form connections with people who would come to mean everything to him: James Potter, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, the other members of the Marauders. The Marauders, as they came to be known, were a group of misfit Hogwarts students who shared a bond of friendship and a sense of adventure. They not only excelled at magic, but also pushed the boundaries of what was possible, with their ability to become animagi being one of their most remarkable achievements. Sirius's transformation into a dog was his way of becoming part of this group, and it was an act of deep significance for him. The dog symbolized his bond with his friends, his willingness to be there for them no matter the cost. It was a form that connected him to the most loyal and meaningful relationships in his life, ones that transcended the coldness of his upbringing. As a dog, Sirius was also able to access a form of freedom he had longed for since childhood. In his dog form, he was no longer confined by the social expectations of his family or the heavy weight of his own emotions. His animagus form allowed him to escape, even if only temporarily, from the harsh realities of his life. This was particularly important after he was wrongfully imprisoned in Azkaban, where the feeling of entrapment and despair consumed him. Sirius's escape from Azkaban was, in part, made possible by his ability to transform into a dog, which allowed him to slip past the prison's defenses unnoticed. Yet, despite the freedom his dog form granted him, Sirius never lost sight of his most fundamental desire to protect the people he loved. His bond with Harry was particularly poignant in this respect. From the moment he first met Harry, Sirius saw a reflection of himself in the young boy. Harry was an orphan, much like Sirius had been, and both had suffered the loss of their parents. But where Sirius had been left with nothing but a dark, oppressive legacy, Harry was given the opportunity to forge his own path. This made Sirius feel an overwhelming sense of protectiveness over him, a desire to keep Harry safe from the dangers of the wizarding world. Number 18. The hidden meaning behind the Marauders' nicknames. The Marauders were not merely a group of Hogwarts students known for their mischievous pranks. Their names, which were bestowed upon them by their peers, carried profound significance that went beyond the simple nicknames of teenage rebels. Each of the four Marauders, James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, embodied not just their personalities but elements of their magical abilities, their deeper character traits, and their life stories. The names they were given as teenagers reflected not only the facets of their identities they chose to project, but also deeper meanings that revealed their inner selves, making them legendary figures in the wizarding world. James Potter's nickname, Prongs, is the first to command attention. This particular moniker was a direct reference to his animagus form, in which he transformed into a stag. A stag is a majestic creature, one that symbolizes strength, nobility, and pride. The stag also conveys the idea of leadership and courage, characteristics that were deeply ingrained in James. As a young man, he displayed immense bravery, often risking his life to fight for what he believed in. This is evident when James and his friends, as members of the Order of the Phoenix, took up arms against Voldemort and his followers during the First Wizarding War. Beyond his remarkable ability to transform into a stag, James's personality reflected these qualities. He was proud, self-assured, and never hesitated to stand up for others. His bravery, however, was also tempered with the complexity of his character, as he struggled with the arrogance that came with his popularity and status. Yet the stag was more than just a symbol of James's external bravado. It was a reflection of his internal strength and the legacy of his family, who stood as pillars of courage and moral integrity in the wizarding world. Sirius Black, James's closest friend, had a nickname that spoke volumes about his complex and deeply loyal nature. His nickname, Padfoot, was tied to his animagus form as a large black dog. The dog is traditionally seen as a symbol of loyalty, protection, and friendship. Sirius was a perfect representation of this. He had a strong sense of justice and was fiercely loyal to his friends, even to the point of sacrificing his own safety for their well-being. He was the kind of person who would go to great lengths to protect those he loved, as seen when he risked his life to escape from Azkaban to help Harry Potter. The dog also represents a certain wildness, a spirit of independence that could not be tamed, and Sirius embodied this freedom in every sense of the word. His rebellious nature and disdain for his aristocratic family's ideals made him a constant outsider, someone who rejected authority and tradition in favor of forging his own path. His dog form symbolized this aspect of his character, a creature who runs freely, unbound by societal expectations, but fiercely loyal to those who earned his trust. Remus Lupin's nickname, Moony, was a poignant reflection of his tragic yet admirable nature. His transformation into a werewolf during each full moon made this particular nickname deeply fitting. The moon itself is often associated with change, cycles, and mystery, and for Remus it symbolized his constant battle with his own inner demons. His struggle with lycanthropy was something that defined much of his life, and his friends understood the symbolism of the full moon better than anyone. Remus's condition was a cruel twist of fate, one that forced him to endure a painful transformation every month, turning him into a dangerous creature he could not control. Yet, despite his affliction, Remus never let it define him entirely. His nickname reflected his struggle, but also his acceptance of it. It spoke to his resilience, his ability to continue living with dignity despite the hardships he faced. The moon may have dictated his transformations, but it did not govern his life, and Remus proved that even in the face of adversity, one could continue to lead a meaningful and fulfilling life. His friends, by giving him this nickname, honored both his bravery and the deep humanity he showed by not letting the curse of lycanthropy break him. Then there was Peter Pettigrew, the most tragic of the Marauders, whose nickname, Wormtail, speaks to his unfortunate nature. His animagus form was that of a rat, an animal that symbolizes cowardice, betrayal, and a tendency to scurry in the shadows. Unlike James, Sirius, and Remus, Peter was not a natural leader, nor did he possess the courage to stand by his friends in their darkest hours. Instead, his rat form symbolized his willingness to betray those who trusted him. It is not without irony that Peter, who was once a trusted companion to Harry's father James, turned out to be the very person who would lead to the downfall of the Potters by betraying their trust and revealing their location to Lord Voldemort. Peter's name, Wormtail, speaks to his deep-seated fear, his willingness to do whatever it took to avoid conflict, even if it meant committing the most treacherous of acts. The rat is often seen as a creature that survives by scurrying in the dark, avoiding attention and seeking out the safest possible course. Peter's personality mirrored this survival instinct. He was not brave like James, nor free-spirited like Sirius, nor noble like Remus. His rat form was a perfect encapsulation of his character, a creature that lived by avoiding conflict, feeding off the strength of others, and ultimately betraying those who had once called him a friend. Number 19. What happened to James Potter's family home? The story of the Marauders and their association with the Potter family home in Godric's Hollow is one that often evokes images of tragedy, courage, and unbreakable bonds. However, the history of the Potter family's residences extends far beyond the ruins of that fateful house, and there is a lesser-known chapter that has been mostly overshadowed by the famous events surrounding the deaths of Lily and James Potter. The Potter family's first home, before they moved to Godric's Hollow, was a sprawling estate near London. It was here that James Potter grew up, surrounded by wealth, comfort, and magical privilege. His parents, Fleamont and Euphemia Potter, were not only rich but also well-respected members of the wizarding community. Fleamont had earned his fortune through the invention of Sleek Easy's hair potion, which became hugely popular and made the Potters' household names in the wizarding world. This luxurious home was situated far from the dark shadows that would later overtake their lives in Godric's Hollow. For a time, it served as a place of joy and prosperity for the Potter family. Fleamont and Euphemia were said to be loving parents, with Fleamont having a particularly playful and whimsical nature. James, their only child, was raised in an environment of comfort and security, completely unaware of the tragedy that would later befall his parents. The Potters were well known in the wizarding community, and their home was a symbol of the success and stability that many could only dream of. Yet despite their good fortune, life for the Potters would take a dark turn. Fleamont and Euphemia, though in their prime, were not immune to the ravages of age. Fleamont's death was the first blow to the family, followed shortly by Euphemia's passing. With their deaths, the estate was passed down to their son James, who was then a young man embarking on his journey into adulthood. James, like his parents before him, became a well-known and respected member of the magical community. However, unlike his parents, he was not content with simply living a life of comfort. He joined the fight against the Dark Lord, Voldemort, and became one of the most celebrated figures in the First War against the Death Eaters. When James married Lily Evans and they moved to Godric's Hollow, the grand house near London was left behind. James and Lily's decision to settle in Godric's Hollow, a more secluded and quieter location, was partly influenced by the increasing danger in the wizarding world. At the time, the Dark Lord was gaining strength, and Voldemort's loyal followers, the Death Eaters, had begun their campaign of terror. James, a talented wizard and skilled Quidditch player, needed a safe space where his growing family could hide from the rising tide of darkness. After James and Lily's deaths, the Potter estate near London fell into a quiet oblivion. It was James's best friend, Sirius Black, who would eventually inherit the house after James's untimely death. Sirius, who had been entrusted with the care of Harry Potter as his godfather, took possession of the property. In the years following the tragic deaths of Lily and James, Sirius became a key figure in Harry's life, and their relationship was one of profound importance to Harry. Sirius was a man who had suffered the betrayal of his family, the Black family, and had been unjustly imprisoned in Azkaban for a crime he didn't commit. For him, the Potter family home represented more than just a house. It was a symbol of everything he had lost and everything he had fought for. But fate had other plans for the Potter estate. After Sirius's wrongful imprisonment, the house was left abandoned, much like the lives of the people it had once sheltered. The mansion that had once been a place of comfort and happiness for the Potters was now a crumbling shell of its former self. The significance of the Potter family home was never fully realized in the books, but it played a crucial role in the larger narrative of Harry Potter's life. The mansion, long untouched, represented the deep scars left by Voldemort's reign of terror. It also symbolized the unrelenting cycle of loss that had befallen so many in the wizarding world. In a lesser-known part of the story, J.K. Rowling revealed that after Sirius's arrest, the Potter estate near London was not left to fade into obscurity. Instead, it was seized by the Ministry of Magic and repurposed as a shelter for the victims of the First Wizarding War. This transformation from an aristocratic home to a refuge for the displaced mirrored the changing world in which the wizarding community found itself. The Ministry, which had previously been indifferent to the suffering caused by Voldemort's reign, now took a more active role in providing for those affected by the war. The house, now repurposed as a sanctuary, symbolized the shift in power and priorities that had occurred during this dark chapter in magical history. However, the house's transformation was not without its controversies. For many, the idea that the home of such a prominent family could be used as a shelter for the war-torn was a difficult one to accept. The mansion, once the epitome of magical privilege and wealth, had now become a symbol of the consequences of war and the need for healing. The former glory of the estate was overshadowed by the reality of the war's toll on the wizarding world. Still, in its new form, it served as a reminder of the sacrifices made by countless families, including the Potters, in the fight against Voldemort. The Potter estate near London was not the only residence associated with the family's legacy. Godric's Hollow, where Lily and James were ultimately murdered, remains the most iconic of their homes. It was here that Harry was left orphaned, and the mystery surrounding the origins of the lightning-shaped scar on his forehead began. Yet the mansion near London holds a certain quiet dignity. It was a place where the Potters once thrived, a place where James's laughter could be heard, and where his parents dreamed of a future free from the looming shadow of Voldemort. When the house became a shelter for victims of the war, it embodied the idea that there could still be hope for the future, even in the face of immense loss. As the war raged on and the Ministry's involvement deepened, the legacy of the Potters continued to be felt, though it was often buried beneath the weight of more pressing concerns. The mansion near London may have been abandoned and repurposed, but it was never forgotten. The estate was a testament to the perseverance of the wizarding community, and a reminder that even in the darkest times there is a chance for rebuilding. And while the details of its transformation remain a lesser-known part of the story, the house and its history serve as a reflection of the resilience and strength of the magical world. In the end, the story of the Potter family home, though not as widely known as the one in Godric's Hollow, carries with it a deep and meaningful message. It serves as a symbol of both the good and the bad that has shaped the wizarding world. And while the mansion no longer stands as a symbol of wealth and privilege, it remains a vital part of the greater story, a testament to the enduring legacy of the Potters and the world they helped shape. Number 20. Which professors knew about Lupin's secret? The secret of Remus Lupin's lycanthropy was one of the most carefully guarded mysteries at Hogwarts, a fact kept from students and most of the staff. However, not all the professors remained unaware of the truth. While Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster, made it his personal responsibility to ensure Remus's safety, a few other members of the faculty were aware of his condition, though each had their own reasons for keeping quiet. The concealment of Remus Lupin's secret was not only a matter of personal loyalty, but also a story filled with intrigue, trust, and a remarkable sense of responsibility. Most notably, Professor Minerva McGonagall, the strict and no-nonsense Transfiguration professor, was one of the few who knew about Lupin's condition. McGonagall was a highly competent and dependable teacher with a reputation for discipline and fairness. However, beneath her stern exterior, she cared deeply for her students, and this was no different when it came to Lupin. She had known about the werewolf condition from the beginning and had always respected Dumbledore's decision to keep it a secret. She understood the importance of maintaining a sense of safety and normalcy for the students, particularly the first-year Gryffindors, who were often under her watchful eye. Madame Pomfrey, the ever-diligent matron of the Hogwarts infirmary, was likely the second professor to know. As the one responsible for looking after the students' health, Pomfrey was a woman of deep empathy and practical understanding. She had seen Lupin on many occasions, helping him recover from his monthly transformations. It would have been impossible for her not to have noticed the peculiarities surrounding his condition, especially when she administered care after each transformation. The medical staff at Hogwarts were particularly close-knit, and Madame Pomfrey, as the healer with the most experience, likely had a more intimate understanding of the transformations that Lupin endured. Her role was not just one of professional duty, but of compassion as she treated his condition with utmost care and discretion. Yet, like McGonagall, she kept quiet, respecting the wishes of Dumbledore and the need for secrecy. One of the most intriguing aspects of Lupin's secret, however, is the fact that Severus Snape, the potions master, was also aware of Lupin's condition, though he chose to keep it to himself. Snape was always an enigmatic figure at Hogwarts, known for his sharp tongue and even sharper intelligence. As the head of Slytherin House and a highly skilled potion maker, Snape was a master of observation, always keen to spot discrepancies and hidden truths. His skills in potion-making were extraordinary, and he had a keen eye for detail. When Lupin first began teaching defense against the dark arts, Snape immediately became suspicious. He had an instinctive knowledge that something about Lupin wasn't quite right. It wasn't just a matter of observing Lupin's health, but rather a combination of strange behaviors and peculiarities that Snape was well equipped to recognize. Snape was an expert in many fields, but his sharp mind was particularly adept at reading people. When he saw Lupin's pale complexion and understood the difficulties he faced in maintaining control over his transformations, Snape must have been quick to suspect the truth. But Snape was no fool. He also knew of Dumbledore's influence and his ability to protect those under his care. And although he may have been an adversary to Lupin in the classroom, Snape was still a man of his word when it came to matters of trust and loyalty. Severus Snape's decision to stay silent about Lupin's condition was, perhaps, one of his most morally complex moments. He was not someone known for empathy, but Snape's own respect for Dumbledore, albeit a grudging one, made him honor the headmaster's wishes. His silence was not an admission of kindness or understanding, but rather a silent acknowledgement of the trust Dumbledore had placed in him. Snape, despite his often caustic nature, recognized the delicate balance that Dumbledore had to maintain at Hogwarts, and he understood that the secret of Lupin's lycanthropy was not only a personal matter for the teacher, but also a matter of protecting the students. As the potions master, Snape's role in the school was one of immense power and influence. He was privy to the students' weaknesses and vulnerabilities, often using his knowledge of their secrets as leverage. But with Lupin, Snape knew when to draw the line. This act of restraint, one of the few in Snape's long history of difficult decisions, showed that even he could understand the value of keeping certain truths hidden. Snape's respect for Dumbledore and his unwavering loyalty to the headmaster were often underappreciated, but they played a critical role in keeping the secret intact. His decision to stay silent, to not reveal Lupin's lycanthropy, to the rest of the faculty or to the students spoke volumes about his complex character. Dumbledore's actions were always motivated by a deep sense of responsibility, but also by a profound belief in second chances. He was the one who had made the decision to offer Lupin a place at Hogwarts, knowing the dangers and complications of harboring a werewolf in the school. In many ways, Lupin's situation mirrored Dumbledore's own life. Both were haunted by their pasts, both had made mistakes, and both understood the importance of redemption. Dumbledore had gone to great lengths to protect Lupin, and part of that protection came from ensuring that as few people as possible knew the truth. By sharing the secret with only a handful of trusted professors, Dumbledore ensured that those closest to Lupin would be there to support him, without jeopardizing the safety of the students or the reputation of the school. The fact that Dumbledore kept such a dangerous secret hidden from most of the staff is telling of his deep belief in the power of trust. He trusted Professor McGonagall, Madame Pomfrey, and Severus Snape to help him maintain that secret, but he also recognized that there was a risk in keeping the information so limited. It was a delicate game that Dumbledore played, one that required him to constantly weigh the consequences of each decision. The Marauders, who were also aware of Lupin's condition, played a key role in ensuring his safety at Hogwarts. James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew were more than just close friends. They were a group bound by their shared experiences and their willingness to protect each other. As students, they had discovered Lupin's secret and had taken steps to ensure that he would never have to face the terror of his transformations alone. The Marauders, though mischievous and often reckless, had an unshakable bond, and their actions in helping Lupin were a testament to their loyalty and love for their friend. They had even gone so far as to secretly become animagi, so that they could accompany Lupin during his transformations and keep him from harming anyone during the full moon. These acts of courage and camaraderie were the heart of Lupin's survival at Hogwarts. His condition, though a heavy burden, was lightened by the unwavering friendship of the Marauders. And while their secret was also known to a few professors, the core of their alliance lay in their willingness to protect each other at all costs, even if it meant breaking the rules or risking their own safety. In many ways, the secret of Lupin's lycanthropy was not just a secret of one man's struggle, but a secret that bound together the lives of many, from the teachers who supported him to the students who trusted him. The mystery of Lupin's secret is one of the many complex layers that make up the world of Harry Potter. It is a tale of loyalty, trust, and sacrifice, where the boundaries between right and wrong are often blurred, and the cost of secrecy can be both heavy and necessary. The fact that some of the most respected figures at Hogwarts, like McGonagall, Pomfrey, and Snape, knew the truth about Lupin, yet chose to remain silent, reveals a deep understanding of the delicate balance between protecting a person's dignity and the need for secrecy to ensure their safety. It also highlights the lengths to which Dumbledore was willing to go to protect his staff and students, showing that even the most seemingly innocuous of secrets can carry with them the weight of profound responsibility. Number 21. What role did Severus Snape play in the Marauders' story? Severus Snape's role in the story of the Marauders is a fascinating and deeply intertwined one, marked by a complex web of animosity, rivalry, and a shocking twist of fate. For many, Snape was simply the villain in the Hogwarts story, the strict potions master who seemed to delight in tormenting Harry Potter and his friends. But the reality is far more nuanced, especially when it comes to his relationship with James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, the infamous Marauders. In the early days, Snape's life seemed to be centered around being a target for ridicule. James Potter, with his boundless charisma and arrogance, took great pleasure in humiliating Snape, a boy who seemed to lack the confidence and ease that James and his friends exhibited. In one of the most infamous moments from their school years, James and Sirius used their magic to turn Snape into a spectacle, subjecting him to their pranks. It was a game for them, a way to assert their dominance over someone they considered inferior. But what they didn't realize was how deep their bullying would cut, or how much it would shape Snape's future. For Snape, the constant harassment at the hands of the Marauders had far-reaching consequences. Though he was far from an innocent figure, he had his own insecurities, fears, and desires that were often ignored or mocked by his peers. The rivalry between James and Snape is often portrayed as a clash of personalities, but the animosity runs deeper than simple schoolyard quarrels. Snape was a boy who had known pain and rejection from an early age, and the Marauders were a painful reminder of his perceived failure to live up to expectations. For Snape, their antics felt like a personal betrayal. Yet what truly cemented Snape's relationship with the Marauders was a fateful moment involving the werewolf Remus Lupin. Remus, a dear friend of James, Sirius, and Peter, harbored a secret, a condition that turned him into a werewolf during every full moon. This secret was known only to a few, including the Marauders themselves. However, when Severus Snape discovered the truth, it was not out of kindness or a sense of camaraderie that he decided to share the information. Rather, he saw it as an opportunity for revenge. Driven by years of resentment, Snape concocted a plan that would have been disastrous for Lupin, knowing full well that the Marauders, in their effort to protect their friend, would do anything to shield him from exposure. The moment when Sirius Black, in a fit of mischief, nearly sent Snape straight into Lupin's path during a full moon became a pivotal turning point in their tangled relationship. The Marauders, in their pursuit of a cruel joke, had no idea of the danger they were putting Snape in. As Sirius and James laughed, not understanding the full scope of the threat, Snape found himself standing in the dark corridors of Hogwarts, moments away from facing the transformed werewolf. His life was at stake, and yet, in a twist of fate, it was James Potter who intervened. James, despite his usual bravado and tendency to mock Snape, risked his own life to save him from the werewolf. In that split second, when James leaped into action, throwing caution to the wind to drag Snape away from the terrifying creature, the dynamic between the two boys shifted in ways that neither could fully comprehend at the time. For Snape, this act of heroism, as rare as it was coming from James Potter, had a profound impact on him. It didn't erase the years of torment or the bitterness that he felt toward James, but it planted the seeds of a complicated, conflicted feeling, a strange blend of hatred, resentment, and, beneath it all, gratitude. It was a moment that Snape would never forget, one that would come to define his relationship with James in ways that would only become clear much later. The events surrounding the werewolf incident are crucial not only for understanding Snape's hatred for James, but also for realizing how this moment would shape Snape's future. His hatred of the Marauders, and especially James Potter, was not just about schoolyard rivalry. It was about the deep scars left by years of mockery and bullying. But it was also about something more profound, a sense of debt, one that Snape could never fully reconcile. Even though he hated James for everything he had done, there was a part of him that would always be grateful for the life James had saved. And that gratitude, twisted though it was by years of bitterness, would influence Snape's actions for the rest of his life. As the years went on, Snape's role in the story of the Marauders became more complicated, especially as the truth about his loyalty to Dumbledore and his role as a double agent began to emerge. His relationship with Harry Potter, the son of his former nemesis, was similarly marked by complexity. Snape's actions, driven by a deep sense of guilt and remorse for the past, often seemed contradictory. On one hand, he despised the boy for his resemblance to James, and yet, on the other hand, there was something in Harry that reminded him of the boy he had once been, proud, impulsive, and seeking approval in all the wrong places. The intricate dynamics between Snape and the Marauders also shed light on the deep-seated psychological scars that Snape carried with him. The conflict that he felt between love and hate, gratitude and resentment, was never fully resolved. It was only in his final moments, when he revealed the truth about his loyalties and his love for Lily Potter, that the full scope of his internal struggle came to light. In many ways, Snape's actions toward Harry were less about the boy himself and more about the unresolved pain of his youth, particularly his relationship with James and the bitter legacy of their rivalry. One of the most powerful aspects of Snape's story is how it underscores the idea that people are not simply defined by their actions in the moment. The events of Snape's youth, especially the moment when James saved his life, had an immeasurable impact on him. Even as he aligned himself with dark forces, even as he played the role of the villain in the story of Harry Potter, there was always the shadow of that one life-saving act that haunted him. It was an act of heroism that was never forgotten, no matter how much Snape tried to bury it beneath layers of anger, bitterness, and vengeance. Severus, Snape's relationship with the Marauders, is a reminder that people are not easily categorized as good or evil. Snape's journey is one of contradiction and complexity, shaped by moments of both cruelty and courage. The role that James Potter played in saving Snape from the werewolf may have been a brief one, but its consequences were profound. For Snape, it was the moment that would haunt him forever, influencing his actions, his choices, and his feelings toward the people who had once tormented him. In the end, it was Snape's unacknowledged gratitude for James's sacrifice that defined his ultimate redemption. The sacrifices he made for Harry, though seemingly motivated by hatred and resentment, were, in part, driven by the unresolved debt of that long-ago moment. And while Snape's actions may have seemed cruel, his journey ultimately served to remind us that even the most tortured souls can be shaped by moments of unexpected kindness, moments that, like the light of a single candle in the darkness, can guide someone toward redemption. Number 22. Sirius and Hagrid's flying motorcycle, a forgotten detail. The flying motorcycle that Rubeus Hagrid used to transport baby Harry Potter to the Dursleys' house is one of the most iconic images in the Harry Potter series. It's an image that lingers in the minds of readers and viewers alike, a moment of magic, a promise of adventure, and the beginning of a new chapter for Harry. What many people forget, however, is that the motorcycle Hagrid rode was not just a random choice of transport. It had an incredible backstory tied to the Marauders, the group of friends that included James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew. This particular motorcycle belonged to Sirius Black, and it had more significance than just being a means of flying through the skies. Sirius Black, notorious for his rebellious spirit and refusal to conform to societal expectations, had always been the kind of person who craved freedom. His life, especially in his childhood, was dominated by the suffocating expectations of his pure-blood family, the Blacks, who were entrenched in traditional views of blood purity. From a young age, Sirius rejected these notions, becoming a bold and daring young man, one who refused to live according to the rigid, oppressive rules that governed the lives of his family. The motorcycle, therefore, became much more than just a mode of transport. It was a symbol of freedom, an escape from the chains of his upbringing. It's easy to understand why this motorcycle would become so important to Sirius. Unlike the heavy, ornate carriages that were the typical means of transport for wizards, the motorcycle represented something wild, something untamed. It was a vehicle that could soar through the air, cutting through the clouds, and it offered a sense of independence and autonomy that Sirius craved. It was also a symbol of rebellion, a way for Sirius to assert his individuality, to say that he would not be confined to the norms that were expected of him. He often travelled with his best friend, James Potter, on adventures throughout Britain, not just for missions related to the Order of the Phoenix, but also for the simple joy of exploring the world around them. Sirius and James were inseparable in their youth, both sharing a bond that was deeper than just friendship. They had been through countless adventures together, defying authority, sneaking around Hogwarts, and challenging the status quo. It was during one of these adventures that Sirius first made the decision to acquire the motorcycle. James, always one to encourage his friends' daring escapades, was more than happy to ride along. The two of them would ride through the countryside, feeling the wind rush past them as they flew through the skies, free from the pressures of their families, the wizarding world, and the constant threat of the Dark Lord. The motorcycle quickly became a legendary symbol in their friendship. It was not just a way for them to get from one place to another, it was a part of their identity, a reflection of their shared experiences and desires. When the two of them joined the Order of the Phoenix to fight against Voldemort, the motorcycle became a symbol of their commitment to the cause. They would use it for missions, flying in and out of danger zones with a sense of freedom and urgency. The motorcycle became a reminder that they were fighting for something greater than themselves, a fight for the freedom that the Dark Lord was trying to take away from the wizarding world. But it wasn't just the motorcycle that made the bond between Sirius and James so special. It was their friendship, their shared belief in standing up for what was right, even when it meant going against the established norms. Together they took on the world, with the motorcycle serving as a constant companion in their fight for freedom. The motorcycle wasn't just a symbol of rebellion, it was a way for them to escape the heavy responsibilities that came with their positions in the wizarding world. It was a way for them to be themselves, without the weight of their family names and their social status holding them back. The motorcycle's significance doesn't end with Sirius, however. When Harry was born, it was James Potter who had been so determined to protect his son that he and Lily made the ultimate sacrifice. James and Lily's death was a tragedy that shaped the entire wizarding world, but it also left behind a legacy for Harry. The connection between Harry and the motorcycle was not just through his godfather Sirius, but through the legacy of his parents. Sirius, in his grief, took it upon himself to care for Harry, to protect him the way James would have wanted. And so, when the time came for Harry to be delivered to the Dursleys, it was Sirius who entrusted Hagrid with this important task. But what truly makes the motorcycle's involvement in Harry's life so poignant is the connection it provides between the past and the present. The motorcycle was not just a relic of Sirius's youth, it was a link to a time of freedom, a time before the dark cloud of Voldemort's reign had taken hold of the wizarding world. It was a reminder of the lives that had been lost and the friendships that had been formed in the heat of battle. And when Hagrid took the motorcycle and used it to transport Harry to the Dursleys, it was a symbolic passing of the torch. The motorcycle, which had once carried Sirius and James on wild adventures, now carried the hope for the future. Harry, the son of James and Lily, was the next in line to carry on the fight against the darkness that had taken so much from the world. The choice of this particular mode of transport, then, speaks volumes about the journey Harry was about to embark on. It wasn't just a random choice, it was a reflection of the deep connections between Sirius, James, and Harry. The motorcycle, which had once been a symbol of youthful rebellion, now became a symbol of Harry's inheritance, his connection to his parents, to the Marauders, and to the cause they had fought for. It was as if the motorcycle itself had become a guardian of the past, a reminder of the sacrifices that had been made, and a harbinger of the challenges Harry would face in the future. Sirius's connection to the motorcycle was also a reflection of his character. He was a man who had always been free-spirited, someone who refused to be confined by the expectations of his family or society. The motorcycle, in that sense, was an extension of his own personality, wild, untamed, and unapologetic. It wasn't just a mode of transport, it was an expression of who he was. And in that way, it was a perfect fit for Harry, who would also grow up to be someone who valued freedom, independence, and loyalty. As time went on, the motorcycle's significance only grew. After Sirius's death, it became a powerful reminder of the man who had been Harry's godfather, who had loved him like a son. When Hagrid flew Harry to the Dursleys, it wasn't just an act of delivery, it was an act of connection, a way to bridge the gap between the past and the future. The motorcycle, in a sense, became a link between the generations, a symbol of the friendship and loyalty that had shaped the wizarding world. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was a symbol of everything that had come before and everything that was yet to come. The motorcycle's story, then, is a story of freedom, of rebellion, of connection, and of loss. It is a symbol of the bond between Sirius, James, and Harry, and a reminder of the sacrifices made in the fight against evil. In the end, it was more than just a flying motorcycle. It was a symbol of hope, of survival, and of the unbreakable ties that bind the characters of the Harry Potter universe together. Number 23, could Lily have been the fifth Marauder? For years, fans of the Harry Potter series have pondered the dynamics of Lily Evans's relationship with the Marauders. While officially she was not part of their notorious group of troublemakers, it's clear from the various narratives in J.K. Rowling's work that Lily played an influential role in their lives, so much so that some fans have speculated she might have been the fifth Marauder had circumstances been different. Though her name never appears alongside James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew in their notorious pranks or the map they created, Lily Evans was undoubtedly an important, albeit more subdued, part of their circle. Lily's role in the Marauders' world, however, was not marked by mischief or antics. Instead, she was the calm amidst the storm, often acting as a moderating force for the more reckless members of the group, particularly James and Sirius. It's easy to imagine her as a voice of reason, stepping in when things threatened to go too far. This was especially true when considering the way James and Sirius acted throughout their school years. They had an insatiable need for adventure, frequently finding themselves in trouble with their pranks. However, it was Lily's voice that kept them grounded, reminding them of the consequences of their actions and pushing them to be better. She was more than just a moral compass for James. She was, in many ways, the force that kept the Marauders from spiraling out of control. Her relationship with the Marauders is often depicted through the lens of her friendship with Severus Snape. Their falling out, stemming from Snape's cruel nickname for her, Mudblood, created an irreparable rift between them. But even in her estrangement from Snape, Lily's connections to the Marauders remained important. She might not have joined in their pranks, but her relationships with them showed a deep bond that wasn't defined solely by their differences in temperament. In particular, her close bond with Remus Lupin is often noted as one of the most touching aspects of her connection to the Marauders. Lupin, who often kept to himself, was particularly fond of Lily. He frequently spoke of her with warmth and reverence, appreciating her kindness and wisdom. She, in turn, was someone who accepted him without judgment. Remus, who often felt like an outsider because of his lycanthropy, found in Lily not just a friend, but someone who valued him for who he was. This deep respect for Lily was a defining part of Lupin's relationship with her. It was clear that her presence was one of the few constants in his life that gave him comfort. While Lily was not actively involved in the Marauders' pranks or escapades, her impact on their lives was undeniable. One specific example of her influence can be found in the story of how she helped James Potter change. James, known for his arrogance and prankster nature, fell deeply in love with Lily while they were at Hogwarts. Though initially he was dismissive of her intelligence and often clashed with her, their relationship evolved over time. It was Lily's insistence on respect and her refusal to tolerate James's behavior that eventually led him to grow and mature. She softened the brash edges of his personality, encouraging him to shed his earlier arrogance and become someone better. It's easy to picture Lily as an unassuming figure in the Marauders' lives, especially when she wasn't a part of their antics. However, the group held her in high regard. She may not have been the one who contributed to the creation of the Marauders' map or joined in their mischievous pranks, but her influence on their character was profound. James Potter, in particular, was a changed person because of Lily's presence in his life. Without her, it's possible that James would have remained as immature as he was when he first met Lily, and the path to becoming the selfless and courageous hero we see in the Battle of Hogwarts would have been much harder to imagine. Lily's indirect involvement with the Marauders became more apparent as time went on. While she was often seen as the voice of reason, there were subtle moments where she was an active participant in their lives. The Marauders, despite their tendency to act recklessly, were not blind to Lily's influence. Even when she was no longer a part of their social circle due to her eventual estrangement from Severus Snape, she remained in their hearts and minds. For example, when James was killed, Sirius and Lupin both expressed regret that Lily never saw the full extent of the change in James's character. They both understood that it was Lily who had pushed James toward becoming the person he ultimately became, someone who valued loyalty, love, and sacrifice over his former desire for power and recognition. What's more, Lily's impact on the Marauders extended beyond James and Lupin. Even Sirius Black, who was known for his rebellious nature, valued Lily's presence in their group. Although Sirius's relationship with James was far more tumultuous than with Lily, he never underestimated her importance in their lives. Sirius, who was often at odds with his own family's views on blood purity, shared Lily's strong sense of justice. It's likely that the two, despite their differences in personality, saw eye to eye on matters of equality and fairness. Their mutual respect for each other was a quiet, unspoken bond that added depth to the Marauders' friendships. In the years after Lily's death, both Sirius and Remus would reflect on how different their lives might have been had she lived. In Harry Potter's eyes, his mother was almost a mythical figure, someone whose impact could still be felt decades after her death. The Marauders, despite their flaws, had a lasting respect and affection for Lily, and that respect would influence their actions long after she was gone. Even in the darkest days of the First Wizarding War, when both Sirius and Remus fought bravely, They did so with the memory of Lily's spirit in mind. She was, in a sense, the constant reminder of what they were fighting for. Fans have often speculated on how different the Marauders' dynamic could have been had Lily chosen a different path. What if she had been more involved in their pranks, had taken part in their mischievous adventures, and been an active participant in their antics? Would she have become the fifth Marauder, just as integral to the group as the other four? It's a question that fans will never know the answer to. However, what we do know is that Lily Evans's role in the Marauders' world was not one of a passive observer. She was an essential part of their lives, whether they realized it or not. Though she never officially joined the Marauders, her influence on the group, and on James in particular, was so significant that it often felt as though she were a part of them. Lily was the grounding force, the one who held the group together even when they were at their most reckless. She may not have been the one who created the Marauders' map or joined in the chaos that defined their years at Hogwarts, but without her, the Marauders would never have been the same. Her legacy lived on not just in James's heart, but in the hearts of those who admired her. It's clear that, in her own way, Lily Evans was every bit as much a Marauder as any of them. Number 24. Why James's parents had him so late in life. James Potter's birth was an event that seemed almost magical, not just in the context of the wizarding world, but also in the life of his parents, Fleamont and Euphemia Potter. The Potters, a well-respected and wealthy wizarding couple, had experienced years of disappointment waiting for the gift of a child. When James was finally born, both Fleamont and Euphemia were already in their 40s, a time when many in the magical world might have assumed their chance at parenthood had passed. The fact that they had waited so long for their son shaped James's early years in ways that would leave lasting impressions on his personality. For many years, Fleamont and Euphemia had struggled with infertility. It wasn't a subject they talked about openly, but their deep longing for a child was a well-known part of their lives among close friends. Their years of marriage had been filled with joy and success, yet the absence of a child left a gap, a silent sorrow. Euphemia, in particular, had dreamed of motherhood, but time had begun to slip away. As their friends had children of their own, they had been surrounded by what they had wanted but could not have. The couple began to resign themselves to the idea that they would never experience the joy of raising a child. Then, when they least expected it, Euphemia found herself pregnant with James. The news came as a complete surprise to them both, and they couldn't quite believe it at first. The couple had long ago given up on the hope of expanding their family, and suddenly the dream they had once shared was becoming a reality. It was as if the universe had given them a second chance. Euphemia, with her characteristic grace, took to motherhood with immense joy, and Fleamont, ever the doting husband, showered her with support and affection. James's arrival marked a new beginning for the Potters, one filled with delight and excitement. Their joy knew no bounds. James, being the child they had longed for, became the center of their world. His parents' love for him was unrelenting, and they lavished him with attention. Fleamont, a highly skilled wizard and a successful businessman, used his wealth to ensure that James had everything he could ever need. They indulged him with the best toys, the finest education, and the most exquisite care. James grew up in an environment filled with warmth and adoration, surrounded by the kind of love that only the fulfillment of a long-held dream could inspire. But this excess of attention, while born out of love, may have also had a lasting impact on James's character. James's upbringing was marked by a degree of privilege that few children in the wizarding world could imagine. With parents who were both wealthy and highly respected, he never wanted for anything. The Potters were known for their status in the magical community, and James was often in the spotlight, the son of a famous family with great expectations resting on his shoulders. Fleamont and Euphemia, while kind-hearted, were not shy about their pride in James. Their son was a reflection of their success, and they were eager to see him achieve greatness. From an early age, James was surrounded by the finest education money could buy. He attended Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, where he quickly made a name for himself. His natural talents, particularly in transfiguration, were obvious to his professors. However, it wasn't just his magical ability that drew attention. It was his confidence and sense of self-assurance. James had a charm about him, a magnetism that made him popular among his peers. He quickly became the center of attention wherever he went, surrounded by friends and admirers who were captivated by his wit and charm. But despite his popularity, there was a side to James that few people understood. The child of parents who had waited so long for him, James had become somewhat spoiled. Fleamont and Euphemia's devotion to their son had led to a certain level of indulgence. James's childhood was marked by a sense of entitlement that he would later struggle with as he matured. His parents' unrelenting love, while nurturing, may have shielded him from certain lessons in humility and responsibility. James often found himself in situations where he had to learn the hard way that the world wasn't as accommodating as his parents had been. The consequences of James's sheltered upbringing became apparent as he entered his teenage years. Although he was a brilliant wizard and a natural leader, he could sometimes be reckless. His sense of entitlement, the belief that he could get away with anything, led to trouble with authority figures at Hogwarts. His mischievous streak, which would later become legendary as part of the Marauders, was born from a combination of his natural charisma and the confidence instilled in him by his doting parents. James was, in many ways, a product of his upbringing, an upbringing where his every need had been catered to, and where he was often shielded from the consequences of his actions. Despite these flaws, there was an undeniable warmth to James. His heart, unlike many of the other boys at school, was always in the right place. He was fiercely loyal to his friends, particularly to Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, and he would go to great lengths to protect them. His friendships, which would later become the foundation of the Marauders, were rooted in mutual respect and camaraderie. James, while perhaps a bit full of himself at times, was never malicious. His love for his friends and his sense of justice were deep and unwavering. James's relationship with his parents continued to be a defining feature of his life, even as he grew older. Fleamont and Euphemia remained supportive, even during the darker days of the First Wizarding War. They were there for him when he faced difficult choices, and they gave him the freedom to forge his own path. It is clear from the narrative that James Potter, despite his flaws, had a strong moral compass. His parents' love had shaped him into a man who, at his core, was brave and selfless. This bravery would eventually lead to his death as he sacrificed his life to protect his wife, Lily, and their son, Harry. However, the Potters' late parenthood also had a more tragic element. James never had the chance to fully mature in the way many young men do. His parents' untimely deaths at the hands of Voldemort left him with an unfinished legacy, and his son, Harry, would grow up without the guidance of the very parents who had doted on him. Fleamont and Euphemia's love for their son had created a cocoon around him, but it was a cocoon that could not shield him from the harsh realities of the world. In the end, the Potters' late parenthood is a testament to the unpredictable nature of life. Fleamont and Euphemia had nearly given up hope, only for their dream to come true in the most unexpected way. Their love for James was all-encompassing, and it undoubtedly shaped him into the man he became. Though he made mistakes, James was loved deeply, and his legacy lived on through his son, Harry. In many ways, the Potters' late parenthood became one of the most defining aspects of James's life, one that shaped his character and the way he approached the world. Number 25. How Harry learned the real names behind the map. The Marauders map, one of the most iconic magical objects in the Harry Potter universe, has captivated readers and viewers alike. It's not just the map itself that holds significance, but the mystery surrounding its creators. In J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the moment when Harry discovers the true identities of the Marauders is an emotional revelation, one that deepens his connection with his father and sheds new light on the figures who have been central to his life. In the films, the moment when Harry uncovers the truth about the creators of the Marauders map is left rather understated. It's a brief but significant scene where Lupin meets Sirius in the Shrieking Shack and reveals the true identities behind the infamous nicknames Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. However, in the book, the truth comes with much more emotional depth and clarity. This revelation is a pivotal turning point in Harry's understanding of his father's past and the complex relationships that defined it. For much of Harry's life, his father, James Potter, was little more than an idolized figure, someone who was always spoken of in glowing terms, but who was ultimately a mystery. This truth, uncovered in the eerie silence of the Shrieking Shack, would change that forever. Harry's shock at learning the real identities of the Marauders is palpable. For him, the names on the map, Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, had been part of a great mystery for years. These names were not just the creators of a magical artifact, they were once young men who, in their own way, had shaped the events of Harry's life. But the truth behind these names was even more staggering. Harry had long known Sirius Black as the notorious mass murderer, a man whose name had been synonymous with death and betrayal. To learn that Sirius was once known as Padfoot, one of the closest friends of his father James, was nothing short of a revelation. It was a moment of emotional whiplash for Harry, who had spent much of his life believing in the story that Sirius had betrayed his parents. Lupin's revelation that he had been known as Moony, and that he, Sirius, Peter Pettigrew, Wormtail, and James Potter had been inseparable friends, was something Harry could hardly process. These were the men who had created the map, a magical tool that allowed them to track everyone at Hogwarts and, more impressively, even map out places that were supposed to be hidden. These were the men who had been so deeply involved in Harry's own life, but Harry had only ever seen them through the lens of the aftermath of their actions, the war against Voldemort, the death of his parents, and the betrayal that led to Sirius being imprisoned in Azkaban. The Marauders map had always seemed like a quirky, mysterious item, but it was more than just a prankster's tool. It was a reflection of the bond that once existed between these four young men. In the books, Harry learns that the map was created when the Marauders were students at Hogwarts during a time when James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew were close friends. Their bond was cemented in a shared secret. Sirius and James had helped Lupin, who was a werewolf, to transform into his human form each month so that he could safely attend school. This act of friendship and loyalty was something Harry could never have imagined. For Harry, these were the figures he had grown up hearing about in passing, his father's friends, the infamous Marauders, who had created the map. He had known them only by their nicknames. However, what Harry couldn't have known, and what Lupin's story reveals to him, was the complexity of their personalities and actions. These men, whom Harry had seen only through the lens of their past deeds, were far more than just names on a piece of parchment. They were once young men, full of ambition and excitement, who had gone on to play pivotal roles in the Wizarding War. Harry's understanding of his father, James, who had been an idol to him, changes profoundly in this moment. James Potter was no longer just the heroic figure who had died protecting his family. He was a complex person with flaws, a man who had once been a prankster, a troublemaker, and a loyal friend. He had made mistakes, but he had also created lasting bonds with those around him. For Harry, this was both an emotional shock and an opportunity to find a deeper connection with the father he never knew. The revelation also sheds light on the enigmatic relationship between Sirius and Peter Pettigrew, another Marauder who was a key figure in the events that led to the deaths of Harry's parents. For Harry, discovering that Pettigrew, known as Wormtail, was once a part of this tight-knit group of friends, added a layer of betrayal and confusion. To learn that Pettigrew had been a traitor, the one who had betrayed his parents to Voldemort, was devastating, but the truth about the Marauders and their friendship also helped Harry to understand that even the closest friendships could be shattered by betrayal. Pettigrew's actions, which had been a source of confusion for Harry for years, began to make sense in the context of the bonds and conflicts that had formed the foundation of their shared past. As Lupin explains the history of the Marauders, Harry begins to see the connections between the past and present in a new light. He realizes that the story of the Marauders is not just a tale of youthful mischief, but also a story of friendship, loyalty, and the complexities of human relationships. The map, once a mere tool for Harry, becomes a symbol of the deeper, more meaningful connections that bind people together. It represents not just the magical world of Hogwarts, but the history of Harry's family and the bonds that shaped his own life. Harry's understanding of the Marauders map is also shaped by his growing connection to Sirius. By learning about the deep friendship between Sirius and his father, Harry begins to form a bond with Sirius that goes beyond the man he had once viewed as a dangerous criminal. This revelation allows Harry to see Sirius not just as a man wrongfully imprisoned, but as someone who had once been a beloved friend and a brother to his father. It's a turning point for Harry, who begins to understand that Sirius's relationship with his father was more than just a part of his past. It's something that ties him to Harry in ways he had never imagined. The truth about the Marauders also has an emotional impact on Harry's relationship with Remus Lupin. For Harry, Lupin had always been a figure of authority and kindness, but learning about his past with the Marauders adds a personal layer to their connection. Lupin's own struggles, his werewolf condition, the challenges he faced at Hogwarts, and the sacrifices he made for his friends become more real and relatable to Harry. Harry is able to see Lupin not just as a teacher, but as someone who had been through immense personal challenges, someone who had lived a life of hardship and loyalty. In this moment, Lupin is no longer just the good professor or the sympathetic werewolf. He is a man who has lived a life full of pain, sacrifice, and friendship, and Harry begins to truly appreciate him in a way he never had before. The truth about the Marauders also highlights the emotional cost of war. For Harry, understanding the sacrifices made by his father and his friends, and the ways in which those sacrifices have affected his life, helps him to comprehend the depth of the battle against Voldemort. The story of the Marauders is not just a tale of young men who once had fun at school. It is the story of the people who fought and died in a war that shaped Harry's own destiny. Their actions and the friendships they forged are integral to the larger narrative of the fight against Voldemort, and it is in this moment that Harry begins to understand the emotional weight of the battle his parents and their friends fought for him and the wizarding world. In the end, the The revelation about the Marauders' identities is not just a plot twist, it is a crucial moment in Harry's journey towards self-understanding. It helps him to understand his father in a more profound way, to see Sirius and Lupin as real people, and to begin to grapple with the complicated legacies left by his parents and their friends. The Marauders' map, which had once seemed like a harmless object, becomes a symbol of the ties that bind Harry to his past, and it is through this map that Harry comes to understand the complexities of friendship, loyalty, and betrayal that have shaped his own life. Number 26. Sirius almost ended up in Slytherin. Sirius Black, one of the most beloved and intriguing characters in the Harry Potter universe, was always considered the epitome of a Gryffindor. His daring personality, his boldness in defying authority, and his deep sense of loyalty to his friends and values seemed to firmly place him in the House of Courage and Bravery. Yet in a surprising revelation, Sirius himself admits something that shakes this assumption to its core. The Sorting Hat originally considered placing him in Slytherin. This admission occurs in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban during a conversation between Sirius and Harry, where Sirius shares his past in a rare moment of vulnerability. The connection between Sirius and the Slytherin house is striking when we consider his family background. The Black family, from which Sirius hails, was steeped in pure-blood ideology, and the majority of the Black family members had been sorted into Slytherin. His own cousin, Bellatrix Lestrange, and his aunt, Narcissa Malfoy, were both proud Slytherins, as was his brother, Regulus Black, who tragically became a Death Eater. The notion that Sirius, given his family's notorious leanings, might have followed the same path is entirely plausible. But it was not simply the weight of his family's expectations that shaped Sirius's sorting. Rather, it was his inner conflict and desire to defy his heritage. The Sorting Hat, a magical entity that determines which Hogwarts house best suits a student, initially wavered between Gryffindor and Slytherin. Despite the Hat's inclination to place him with his family's house, Sirius refused to conform. He made a conscious decision to reject the Slytherin legacy that had been forced upon him, choosing instead to be placed in a house where bravery and loyalty were paramount, Gryffindor. Sirius's strong rejection of Slytherin can be viewed as an act of rebellion, one that mirrors his life choices. From a young age, Sirius had been at odds with his parents, Orion and Walburga Black, who were fervent supporters of the dark arts and Voldemort's ideology. The Black family was notorious for their pure-blood elitism, a world-view that Sirius despised. His parents pressured him to conform to their beliefs, pushing him toward a future that would continue the family's legacy of hatred and prejudice. Sirius, however, wanted nothing to do with that world. He saw the dark arts for what they truly were: destructive, evil, and deeply corrupt. In his conversation with Harry, Sirius reveals that although the Hat considered Slytherin, it ultimately respected his wishes and sorted him into Gryffindor. It is important to note that the Sorting Hat is not a rigid, impartial decision-maker. It takes into account a student's desires and choices. If a student feels strongly about being placed in a particular house, the Hat will often honor that desire. Sirius's choice was clear. He was not going to follow in the footsteps of his ancestors, nor was he going to let the expectations of his family define him. By choosing Gryffindor, Sirius was rejecting everything that his family stood for and embracing a new identity, one based on loyalty, courage, and friendship. This decision had a profound impact on his life. Sirius's time at Hogwarts as a Gryffindor shaped his character in ways that would affect the rest of his life. He became close friends with James Potter, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, forming the Marauders, a group known for their mischief, bravery, and unwavering bond. The Marauders were not only a representation of the Gryffindor house's qualities, but also a symbol of Sirius's desire to forge his own path, independent of the darkness that his family embraced. While Sirius's decision to join Gryffindor was an act of personal rebellion, it also placed him on a path of destiny that would ultimately lead him to confront the forces of darkness. His decision to defy his family's expectations and be sorted into Gryffindor was the beginning of his journey away from the dark arts and toward fighting for the greater good. His courage to rebel against his family was a characteristic that would define him throughout his life, even as he later became a key figure in the Order of the Phoenix, battling against Voldemort and his Death Eaters. But what does this say about the Sorting Hat and the power of choice? The fact that Sirius Black, a member of a family that could easily have placed him among the Slytherins, chose Gryffindor, raises important questions about the nature of the Sorting Hat and the role of destiny in the lives of Hogwarts students. It reveals that while the Hat's decision is influenced by traits such as bravery, ambition, intelligence, and cunning, it also respects the free will of students. Sirius's defiance of his family's influence shows that one's future is not solely determined by ancestry or house affiliation, rather it is shaped by personal choice and the strength of one's character. This is not to say that Sirius was completely immune to the Slytherin traits of ambition and cunning. As a member of the Gryffindor house, he undoubtedly exhibited the classic traits of bravery and loyalty, but his intelligence and resourcefulness also set him apart. Sirius was no fool. He understood how to navigate the complex world of magic, and he often used his cleverness to outwit those who sought to harm him or his friends. His transformation from a rebellious teen to a devoted leader in the fight against Voldemort was rooted in his ability to blend the best aspects of both Gryffindor and Slytherin traits. While his heart lay with Gryffindor's ideals, his mind often worked in ways that allowed him to use strategy and cunning when the situation demanded it. One of the most striking aspects of Sirius's decision to be sorted into Gryffindor is the contrast it provides with his cousin, Regulus Black. Regulus, who was also born into the Black family and subjected to the same pressures, ultimately made a very different choice. Regulus was sorted into Slytherin and later became a Death Eater, following the path of darkness that his family had laid out for him. However, Regulus's eventual disillusionment with Voldemort and his decision to steal one of Voldemort's Horcruxes demonstrate that even Slytherins are capable of personal growth and change. In this way, Sirius's rebellion and Regulus's tragic story serve as mirror images of one another. Both are shaped by their family backgrounds, but they ultimately choose opposing paths. Sirius's decision to reject Slytherin and embrace Gryffindor was not just an act of rebellion against his family, but also an act of self-definition. He chose to be someone who fought for what was right, not because of his bloodline, but because of his personal convictions. He would go on to defy the forces of darkness in every sense of the word, whether it was during the First Wizarding War or in his support of Harry Potter, the next generation of young Gryffindors who would inherit his courage and ideals. In many ways, Sirius's story encapsulates the core message of the Harry Potter series. The idea that one's choices define who they are, not their heritage or destiny. Despite his bloodline, Sirius Black chose to reject the darkness of his family and pursue a path of light. In doing so, he became one of the most beloved characters in the wizarding world, a symbol of rebellion, loyalty, and courage. This decision, as revealed by Sirius, proves that the Sorting Hat does not simply pick students based on what they are expected to be. It listens to their hearts and minds, honoring the desires that shape their futures. Sirius Black, like so many others in the Harry Potter series, was defined not by the house he was sorted into, but by the choices he made, the friendships he forged, and the battles he fought. Number 27. Why Pettigrew betrayed his friends. The betrayal of Peter Pettigrew is one of the most tragic and painful moments in the history of the Marauders. It is a subject that still raises questions for many fans of the Harry Potter series. Why did Peter, someone who was once close to James Potter, Sirius Black, and Remus Lupin, turn on them? What could possibly have driven him to betray his friends, especially when they trusted him so completely? Peter Pettigrew's decision to align himself with Voldemort, ultimately leading to the deaths of James and Lily Potter, is a pivotal moment in the series. This betrayal set off a chain of events that would not only devastate the lives of his friends, but also change the course of the wizarding world. To understand why Peter would betray his friends, we need to look deeper into his character. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, provides key insights into Peter's motivations, revealing his deep insecurities, cowardice, and desire to be protected by those who held power. From the outset, Peter was never depicted as a character with the strength of his companions. James, Sirius, and Remus were all strong-willed and brave individuals, qualities that Peter simply did not possess. While his friends faced danger head-on, Peter often took a back seat, preferring to remain in the shadows. This was reflected in his physical appearance as well. While James and Sirius were tall and imposing, and Remus carried himself with a quiet dignity, Peter was small, unremarkable, and often overlooked. In many ways, this was a reflection of his personality. He was afraid to stand out, afraid to be noticed. His entire life seemed to revolve around avoiding confrontation and making himself as inconspicuous as possible. Peter's greatest fear was that he would be left behind. He didn't have the courage to make his own mark in the world, so he latched onto the power and influence of others. His friendships with James, Sirius, and Remus were never equal. They offered him protection, a place within their group, and above all, a sense of security. Peter never questioned his place in the Marauders, but deep down he feared that if he lost their protection, he would be left to fend for himself. He was constantly aware of his own inadequacies, which only added to his fear of being abandoned. Peter's lack of faith in the Order of the Phoenix also contributed to his decision to betray his friends. He did not believe in their ability to defeat Voldemort. Unlike James and Sirius, who were fiercely loyal to Dumbledore and the cause of the Order, Peter never fully embraced the ideals of resistance. He could not see beyond the immediate threat of Voldemort and his followers. In his mind, aligning himself with the Dark Lord seemed like the only sensible option. By doing so, he believed he would be guaranteed protection and survival. Voldemort, after all, was the most powerful dark wizard in history, and anyone who sided with him would be rewarded. It is important to note that Peter's decision was not one of sudden ambition. There was no grand moment where he decided he wanted to rule the wizarding world. His motives were far simpler, rooted in survival and fear. Peter was not motivated by the desire for power, but by his overwhelming desire to be safe. He did not believe in the long-term success of the Order of the Phoenix, because he could not fathom a world where they would defeat Voldemort. For Peter, the risk of defying Voldemort was too great, and his fear outweighed any sense of loyalty or honor. Peter's cowardice was also evident in how he handled the aftermath of his betrayal. After Voldemort's downfall, Peter went into hiding, choosing to live in the shadows rather than face the consequences of his actions. His transformation into the rat Animagus was symbolic of his entire existence. small, insignificant, and willing to hide rather than confront his own guilt. For 12 years, Peter remained hidden, living under the guise of Scabbers, Ron Weasley's pet rat. The fact that he could stay hidden for so long without anyone suspecting him was a testament to his ability to blend into the background and avoid facing the consequences of his actions. However, the moment of betrayal itself was a significant turning point in the lives of the Marauders. Peter's decision to tell Voldemort about the Potters' whereabouts was not just a betrayal of their friendship, it was a betrayal of trust on a much deeper level. James and Lily had placed their trust in him, believing that he was one of their closest friends. They had no reason to suspect that Peter would be capable of such a treacherous act. In fact, they had trusted him so completely that they had made him their secret keeper, the person who would safeguard their location from the Death Eaters. It was this role that Peter had used to his advantage, revealing the Potters' whereabouts to Voldemort, ultimately leading to their deaths. Peter's betrayal was not just a personal failure. It had far-reaching consequences. The deaths of James and Lily Potter set off a chain of events that would shape the course of Harry Potter's life. Had Peter not betrayed his friends, the Potters might have survived, and Voldemort might not have fallen in the way that he did. The ripple effect of Peter's actions is felt throughout the entire series, from Harry's upbringing with the Dursleys to the ultimate defeat of Voldemort. Peter's decision to save his own skin came at the expense of everything else, his friends, the Order, and the Wizarding World. Throughout the series, Peter is portrayed as a pathetic and weak character, someone who is easily manipulated and lacking in the courage to stand up for what is right. His actions have always been driven by fear of Voldemort, fear of being abandoned, and fear of confronting his own guilt. The betrayal of James and Lily Potter was the culmination of this fear. Peter never had the strength to face the consequences of his actions, and so he spent the rest of his life hiding from the truth. The ultimate irony of Peter's betrayal is that he sought safety in the one place where it was never guaranteed. In siding with Voldemort, Peter thought he was ensuring his survival, but he ultimately sealed his own fate. Voldemort, a master of manipulation, used Peter until he was no longer useful. Peter's decision to betray his friends did not lead to the safety he sought. Instead, it left him with a life full of regret and fear. Even in the end, when Peter finally faces the truth of his betrayal, he is unable to escape the consequences of his actions. In the end, Peter Pettigrew's betrayal is a tragic story of fear and cowardice. It is a reminder that sometimes the greatest betrayals come not from a desire for power, but from a simple desire to survive. Peter's decision to betray his friends was driven by his overwhelming fear of Voldemort and his inability to confront his own insecurities. His actions cost him everything: the trust of his friends, his honor, and his soul. The tragic truth is that Peter Pettigrew's betrayal was not the result of ambition or malice, but of deep-seated cowardice and a desire to survive at any cost. Number 28. The Marauders' role in the First Wizarding War. The Marauders, a group of 4 exceptional Hogwarts students, James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, have long been celebrated in the wizarding world for their pranks, mischievous adventures, and their ability to transform into animagi. However, what is lesser known is their crucial role in the First Wizarding War, where their talents and bravery became instrumental in the fight against Voldemort and his Death Eaters. Though their contributions were often overshadowed by tragic events, the Marauders' legacy in the Order of the Phoenix and their fight against the Dark Lord left a profound impact on the magical world. James Potter and Sirius Black were 2 of the most courageous and fearless fighters in the Order of the Phoenix. Even after graduating from Hogwarts, their lives were shaped by their deep commitment to protecting the wizarding world from Voldemort's growing power. James, with his impulsive nature and strong sense of justice, quickly became one of the Order's most reliable members. His involvement in the war was not just as a combatant, but as a leader who helped organize missions and strategies. One of his most defining moments came when he made the ultimate sacrifice to protect his family. In his final stand, James was killed by Voldemort in an attempt to shield his wife, Lily, and infant son, Harry. His bravery was so powerful that it left an indelible mark on Harry, who would carry the legacy of his father's selflessness throughout his own life. Sirius Black, James's closest friend, played an equally vital role in the war. His unyielding loyalty to his friends and his fiery determination to fight against Voldemort made him an invaluable asset to the Order. Sirius's experience as an animagus capable of transforming into a large black dog was invaluable in the field. His form allowed him to navigate difficult situations and protect those in need, using his animal form for stealth and reconnaissance. His escape from Azkaban, where he had been wrongfully imprisoned for betraying his friends, also demonstrated his cunning and resourcefulness. Sirius was not just a fierce fighter, he was a symbol of resistance, embodying the idea that even in the darkest of times, hope could prevail. Tragically, his life was cut short when he was struck down by Bellatrix Lestrange, leaving Harry and his friends to carry on his legacy. Remus Lupin, the third member of the Marauders, had a more complex role in the war. As a werewolf, Lupin was both an asset and a liability to the Order. His condition required him to live in isolation during the full moon, and he was often forced to retreat to his home to protect others from his transformations. Despite this, Lupin's contributions to the war effort were profound. His deep knowledge of magical creatures and his sharp tactical mind made him a valuable member of the Order's inner circle. Lupin often took on reconnaissance and intelligence-gathering missions, using his calm demeanor and careful planning to navigate the most dangerous situations. His ability to remain composed in the face of danger allowed him to gather crucial information about Voldemort's plans and activities. Lupin's personal sacrifice, his isolation due to his condition, mirrored the sacrifices of many others in the war, showing that heroism comes in many forms, even when it is not immediately visible. Then there was Peter Pettigrew, the fourth member of the Marauders, whose role in the war was far less heroic. While his three friends fought valiantly against the forces of Voldemort, Pettigrew's actions were less than admirable. Though he was a member of the Order, his loyalty was always in question. Known for his cowardice and lack of bravery, Pettigrew's true nature was revealed when he betrayed James and Lily Potter to Voldemort, leading to their deaths. This act of betrayal was not only a personal blow to Harry, but also a devastating blow to the Order of the Phoenix, which had relied on Pettigrew's presence. His actions ultimately left an indelible mark on the wizarding world, and he would go on to serve as one of Voldemort's most trusted allies, aiding in the Dark Lord's return to power. Pettigrew's failure to live up to the ideals of his friends stands as a stark contrast to the bravery and loyalty of the other Marauders, and his cowardice ultimately led to his downfall. Despite his betrayal, there is no denying that the Marauders' involvement in the First Wizarding War left an undeniable legacy. The friendship that bound James, Sirius, Lupin, and Pettigrew was forged through years of shared experiences at Hogwarts, and their roles as members of the Order of the Phoenix solidified their place in history. The Marauders' contributions to the war were not limited to their skills in battle. Their cleverness, innovation, and willingness to take risks in the face of overwhelming odds became a symbol of resistance against Voldemort's tyranny. Their deep bonds of friendship, while ultimately shattered by betrayal, were instrumental in maintaining the fight for freedom. For James and Sirius, the war was not just a battle for survival, it was a fight for a better future. The Marauders' friendship was a testament to the power of loyalty and sacrifice, two qualities that were sorely needed in the fight against the Dark Lord. Their unwavering belief in each other and their shared commitment to defeating Voldemort made them powerful forces in the war, even if their lives were tragically cut short. Lupin's role in the war was a reminder that not all heroes are warriors in the traditional sense. His quiet courage, his willingness to fight in spite of the obstacles he faced, and his dedication to the Order made him an invaluable asset in the war effort. Lupin's intelligence and insight, combined with his tactical brilliance, helped the Order gain vital knowledge that led to some of their most successful operations. His sacrifice was a reflection of the many quiet heroes who fought in the shadows during the war, making their contributions without ever seeking the spotlight. Peter Pettigrew's story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of betrayal and the importance of loyalty. Though he once shared the same bonds of friendship as his comrades, his actions during the war revealed the depths of his cowardice and the extent of his moral failings. Pettigrew's betrayal was not just a personal one, it was a betrayal of everything the Marauders stood for. His actions ultimately allowed Voldemort to rise again, setting the stage for the second war that would eventually take Harry Potter on his own journey. The Marauders' story, though tragic, demonstrates the complexities of friendship, loyalty, and the consequences of betrayal. Their bravery, wit, and determination made them heroes in their own right, and their legacy continued to influence the wizarding world long after their deaths. Even though their lives were cut short, the impact of their sacrifices reverberated throughout history, shaping the future of the wizarding world and leaving an indelible mark on the battle against Voldemort. The First Wizarding War may have been a dark time in the magical world, but the Marauders proved that even in the face of such darkness, there were those willing to fight for what was right. Their contributions to the war were not just in their actions, but in the example they set for future generations of witches and wizards. The Marauders taught that heroism was not just about fighting on the battlefield, it was about standing up for what was right, even when it seemed impossible. Number 29. Why Dumbledore didn't entrust Sirius with the Fidelius charm. The story of the Marauders holds some of the most captivating twists in the Harry Potter universe, and one of its most intricate and emotionally charged aspects is the question of why Albus Dumbledore, the wise and strategic headmaster, chose not to trust Sirius Black with the protection of James and Lily Potter. The decision not to make Sirius the secret keeper for the Potters is one that carries a profound weight, not only in the history of the wizarding world, but also in the personal lives of the characters involved. The Marauders, a group of 4 Hogwarts students, James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, shared a deep bond forged through their time at school and their mutual involvement in various magical mischiefs. They became a brotherhood of sorts, loyal to each other to the very end. James, and Lily Potter in particular, had placed immense trust in Sirius, considering him not only a dear friend but also a surrogate family member. Their relationship had been one of the closest in the wizarding world, and there was no doubt that James would have wanted Sirius by his side in a moment as important as protecting his family from Voldemort. However, things began to shift when it became clear that Voldemort was closing in on the Potters. The Dark Wizard, having decimated so many families, was now targeting James and Lily as part of his campaign to conquer the wizarding world. In a desperate attempt to protect themselves, the Potters made the decision to go into hiding using the Fidelius charm, a powerful spell that concealed their location from everyone but one person, the Secret Keeper. This individual would hold the secret of where the Potters were hiding, making it impossible for Voldemort to find them unless that person revealed the secret. Initially, James and Lily, along with Dumbledore, had every intention of using Sirius as their secret keeper. Dumbledore, the renowned wizard with years of experience in dealing with dark forces, had complete confidence in Sirius's loyalty and his ability to protect the Potters. Yet, in a twist that would change the course of history, Sirius suggested an alternative. Peter Pettigrew should take on the role of the secret keeper instead. This decision, seemingly made out of selfless concern for his friend's safety, would ultimately be one of the most fateful mistakes in the saga. The reasoning behind Sirius's suggestion is rooted in his awareness of Voldemort's ruthlessness and cunning. He knew that if Voldemort suspected Sirius of being the secret keeper, he would inevitably target him first. Given the weight of the situation and the deadly consequences that would follow, Sirius feared that Voldemort would come after him with everything he had, leaving James and Lily vulnerable. By choosing Peter, the least likely candidate, he believed they could deceive Voldemort, who would never expect the harmless-looking Pettigrew to be the secret keeper. As a result, Sirius was confident that the Potters would be safer if the burden of the secret fell to someone less obvious. However, the decision was not without its risks, and this was something Dumbledore was aware of. Although he had every reason to trust Sirius's judgment, he knew that the final choice had to rest with James and Lily. Dumbledore, despite his immense wisdom, did not intervene in the decision-making process, deferring to the wishes of James and Lily. His faith in their judgment and his respect for their autonomy as parents led him to honor their wishes, even though he might have had doubts about the wisdom of selecting Peter as the secret keeper. What makes this decision particularly tragic is that while Dumbledore trusted James and Lily's instincts, the choice they made was tragically wrong. Peter Pettigrew, the seemingly mild-mannered and unassuming member of the Marauders, was not the steadfast friend everyone had believed him to be. In truth, Pettigrew harbored a deep-seated cowardice and a self-serving nature that he kept hidden behind a veil of loyalty. In the end, Peter betrayed his closest friends, giving up their secret to Voldemort and setting in motion the events that led to the murder of James and Lily. The consequences of this decision were devastating. Sirius, heartbroken and betrayed, would be blamed for the deaths of his best friends. Despite being innocent, he was falsely accused of their murders, and he spent 12 long years in Azkaban without ever truly having the opportunity to clear his name. His anguish was compounded by the fact that the betrayal came from someone he had trusted, someone he had once called a friend. In his eyes, Peter Pettigrew was as much a part of the Marauder Brotherhood as anyone else, and the revelation of his treachery was a painful and bitter pill to swallow.